Welcome to the Taking Out the Mask podcast. You know, folks, I am so glad that you joined us, and this is our third anniversary episode, and I'm really excited about this solo cast that we're going to have right now. You know, every anniversary, I try and at least have one episode where I'm just kind of talking to you, kind of sharing some of the news of where we've been and what we're currently doing and what's coming up. And I have those three areas to discuss as well. And I think I got a couple of areas in each one that I hope will inspire you, engage you, connect with you. And if nothing else, I hope that today you will just imagine what if you too. What if you could achieve the dreams you have and that nothing could stop you? Well, maybe there's things going to try and stop you, but you have a choice to whether you allow them to or you don't. That's the test. So I look forward to being in this conversation with you, and I look forward to experiencing a moment of connection. Thank you, folks. See you soon. Welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. This is the solo cast for the third anniversary episode. My name is Ashanti Branch. For those of you that have not come to this podcast before, that have not listened to the episodes before, normally we are interviewing guests. It's actually a conversation between two men, myself and a guest, or myself and a young person in the community, about masks, about the emotional masks we wear. We talk about the front of the mask, which are the things that we let the world see, the things that we gladly talk about, the things that we are excited to share with people about ourselves. And then we talk about the back of the mask, the things that we don't talk about much, we don't share. And in these conversations, men come to get real. And I think it's a great place for men to have a conversation with themselves and others around, oh, wait a minute, there is more to me than I'm letting people see. There's more to me than people can see by just looking at me. I believe that to be true. But I think that oftentimes when we are in our daily lives, we may be operating out of a pattern that's just by habit. Here are the things about myself that I'm glad to talk about, and I don't really talk about the other stuff. And hopefully we have inspired people to find someone in their life they can talk to. I hope that through these 150 plus episodes, we have inspired some people to find a person in their life, or they probably already have the person in their life. They just have always kept the conversations at surface level. What would it be like if we could have conversations that are real, deep, profound, meaningful, heartfelt on a regular basis? I think that would be so amazing. You know, today I got a call from a friend, and he was like, "So how are things going?" And I was like, about to just say, "Oh, everything's fine." And I was like, let me just drop in. And I just was like, well, right now I'm heading to my office to do this solo cast. I got this to do. I got that to do. I'm flying to Seattle tomorrow. And I started to just kind of rattle out some things. And I was like, wait a minute, you're giving him way too much. Like, he didn't ask for all this. I said, and I just remember just wrapping it up saying, yeah, that's about all I got right now. And he was like, thank you. Thank you. And he's a man who I know and who I trust. So I know that, I have a room to like be honest. And maybe he wasn't expecting me to go that honest, but I think that oftentimes, what if we knew that when someone asked us the question, they actually meant it? Maybe we help transform that question to being something that actually means something. So when people respond to that question of, how are you doing? How's it going? That you have permission to answer truthfully, fully. That's what it's about. That's what this shirt is about. I'm fine. That's what we've designed. That's what this shirt is about. It says, there's more to me than you can see. And so today I'm just going to talk about three maybe things that will help us to like bring this third anniversary episode together. We're going to talk about where we've been, like where we are right now, and then where we're going. There's a lot of excitement about where we're going. So I'm going to try and get through where we've been and where we are right now pretty quick so that we can move to the next two parts. And hopefully this episode will inspire you to go check out some of the other episodes. Our anniversary episode, which was this past week, was with Donald Friend. He's an educator, a man who really believes in providing space for young people to be seen, be their full selves. What a beautiful episode that was. A place for me as a mentor to hear how I have helped inspire others. And I think that I don't do this primarily for that role, but I'm always hoping that something I do or say will inspire someone else. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that somebody in one of our guests will tell somebody about this, what we're doing. I hope that you will hear an episode and you will share it with somebody. All I can tell you is that we can do better than we're doing right now. So where have we been? Let's jump into where we've been. One area that I know we've been and where I have been, like 2021, this podcast started. It happened with a conversation with a young man from Brazil. I invited some young men from here in my Bay Area to come to this call. None of the young men showed up. That was in the middle of the pandemic. So a lot of young people were definitely tired of being on the computers all day. So trying to get them to show up in the evening at 6 p.m. for a call wasn't necessarily the thing that was on their hot list. And none of them showed up, like zero. And so me and this young man from Brazil, who I had met through his mentor, Marcelo, we just had a conversation. I said, you know what? I've been dreaming about this podcast. Would you be willing to let me record this conversation and let's just do something? And that conversation was the catalyst and the spark that I needed to realize that this is something I've been wanting to do. This is something that is meaningful to me. And even today, when I came in to get things ready for this episode, I went and looked at some of the data and the analytics. And you know, if you're a numbers person, numbers can do things with your mind. Numbers can tell you that you're not worthy. Numbers can tell you that you're not important, that you're not valuable, that you're not as good as you think you are. And if I'm not careful, I could almost have come into this episode feeling a little deflated. I think if I'm being honest, because I'm always trying to be as honest as I can be, as honest as I can stand to be. I should not have looked at the data before I started this conversation, because I had to do some decompressing moments before I started, because I was looking at some of the numbers and I'm like, wait, am I seeing these numbers right? And I am dedicated to these conversations, not for how many people will listen to them, but for the meaningful conversation between me and another person to realize that we're not alone. I think that's valuable right in itself. And as a human who believes that there is something to be said about a lot of people liking it, a lot of people enjoying it and engaging with it is what I've been told for so long is the measure of success. And sometimes when I'm measuring up against those things, I can often feel like I'm not doing it enough. And so today, this episode, as we look back to where we've been, we have been on a journey of learning how to have these conversations. I think that definitely since episode 1, I've gotten a lot better at them, but I'm also knowing that there's still growth to happen. And so as I look about where we are right now and what we're about to do next, I want you to know that we're going to be looking to you to help us know how to move this next chapter. If you're a listener to this podcast, we want you to help us see what are some things you want to hear. Who are some people you want to hear from? You know, a lot of our guests are from word of mouth. You know, we're not out looking for famous people and people who are we're trying to just find people in the world who are willing to share their mask. And hopefully through that conversation, that will inspire another person, and that will inspire another person. And it will continue to inspire people around the world. But every day we get a chance to have these conversations. We believe that one mask inspires another mask and another mask. And that's what we get to do. Taking off the mask one at a time. And so today, where we are right now, the podcast is in episode 153, and we are excited about the next year of this podcast. And we believe that this next year is going to be even more incredible than the past year. This next year, we believe that not only will we have new guests that are going to hopefully inspire you to listen and be a part of it, that will maybe inspire you to tell someone about this next movement. Now, when I think about where we are currently right today compared to where we're going next, we're in motion all the time, but we're going to be launching the Global Champions Program. It is a really exciting opportunity for people around the world to get involved with the Million Mask movement. This vision of growth that we have in terms of reaching our goal by 2025 of 1 million masks requires us to, if we were looking at a linear progression, to be at 500,000 masks by May of 2024. That's a year from now, about a year and literally less than a year. From that actualization of 500,000 masks gets us on a linear path to 1 million by 2025. But there's so much we know that around growth. The growth is not linear. Growth is sometimes exponential. So what we're going to have in this next year is people around the world who are inviting 5 friends, 5 family members, 5 people in their life who they will invite to be a part of the Million Mask movement. So We are excited for this, for not only for you, the listener, for our community, but for the world, because the more that we can help people see that there is so much more to you than anybody can see by looking at you, the more we can help remind people that you are not alone. Sometimes these things sound like cliches, but there's so much truth in them. And what we're doing is to remind people that, you know what? People don't really know me unless I let them. And who do I know that I'm willing to let know me? And maybe there's a person who I want to let know me, but they're not really interested. And so that means I need to take a moment and say, okay, well, that's not the right person. That's not the right person in my life. When we work with young people and work with teachers and educators, a lot of our work as we move forward is going to be really directed at working with educators around creating safe space for our schools. If you have paid attention at all, you know that not only just in the past, but today, our schools are under attack. Our schools are under attack from people who are not educators, but who believe they understand what education they think all children should have. I think we have a lot to do around that. We have a lot of work to do around these conversations around with educators and teachers and counselors and administrators, because our schools are in need. Our schools are the first line of defense of us supporting young people around their development and growth. And oftentimes right now, people are blaming teachers for trying to provide education for students. Well, listen, there's a lot of blame to go around. And if we're going to fix this system of education, it's not going to happen automatically. It's not going to happen with just teachers, because the teachers are in the classrooms with the students. But there are so many layers before that that makes it well for the students to show up to school every day. We meet students all the time who talk about being afraid to go to school, afraid of what's going to happen, worried, scared, doubtful, feeling shame. And if we don't make room for those young people to be seen and heard, we're going to continue picking up the pieces after things have exploded. And let me just name the explosions for you. Our jails are full of men. Now, these masks that we make with people around the world are not just for boys and not just for men, but our jails are full of men. 94% of people incarcerated are men. And we have a responsibility, I believe, as a community, as a society, as family members, as friends, as colleagues, as brothers and sisters and uncles and nephews, to ask our friends, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? And maybe they're fine. Maybe they're fine like that shirt says, but maybe they're saying fine because they don't think you have time to hear what they're really going through. Where do we get time to be heard? And I've heard lots of narratives of people out in the world who continue to say words that are absolutely nonsense. And I've sometimes had myself to battle about, do I speak out against these ridiculous statements that people are making? I don't really want to be in no social media battle with people around what they believe and what I believe, but I'm clear that what I'm doing oftentimes is not even speaking what I believe. And that's going to change. Not that I don't speak what I believe. I don't speak all of what I believe. I speak the little parts that I think won't hit too much scrutiny or too much backlash, but I think I'm clear that education is broken. Our system of education is broken. And oftentimes I wonder if I should speak out against the Department of Education or against this or against that, but I oftentimes don't do it. You know why? Because I'm like, well, maybe they want to give us a grant and maybe I don't want to make them mad. But years later, we've not gotten any money from the Department of Education. We can't even afford to hire a grant writer to apply for the grants from the Department of Education, because you know how much work it takes to apply for a government grant? It's actually sometimes ridiculous. It's almost unconscionable how much work it takes to apply for one of those grants, not only to maintain it and then to actually report on it every time they need you to report on it. It is almost designed so that only certain people will get it. So this is not to complain. This is to name the fact of what our systems are doing. Listen, so I've worked with lots of schools and done this work in those schools. And I'll tell you one story in particular, and then I'll wrap it up to where we're going, because I think you can already feel that where we are right now, where I am right now is charged. I'm charged up. It's not even coming out of anger. It's coming out of passion of really seeing young people hurting. We got work to do. So there's one school that we worked with. They brought us in to do a workshop. Let's say a group of 25 young men. The workshop was beautiful. The workshop was beautiful. A young man in that room revealed that some of the older boys at that school had been forcing him to do things to girls that he didn't really want to do. And so there was some feelings of him feeling really sad about that thing, like him trying to make them proud of him, but doing things that got him in trouble. And so after the workshop was over, with a lot of the boys, we had them do a reflection. Thank goodness we had them do a reflection for this conversation. We had them do a reflection about whether they wanted to be a part of something like this more regularly, whether they wanted to be a part of something where they could come together and have these real conversations. And almost all of them, except maybe 3 of them, said, I want some more of this. One young man said, yeah, I don't really know, but if it's around, maybe I'll check it out. One young man said, well, I got to do stuff after school. Otherwise, I would stay. But for the majority of those young men, they wanted something that would help them to build connection like we had done in that room. So when we reach out to the school to say, hey, here's the reflection from your young men. We're ready to move forward with the next steps. The letter came back from somebody in the school. Now, the letter came back from someone who was not in the workshop. This person had translated information they got from somebody in the workshop and said, well, we don't want you to make assumptions that you're going to do this work here. We think that we should think about it because there's some things you need to do better. And I'm like, hey, I'm down with the feedback. Give me feedback. We would love to make it better. I'm all about making it better. Anybody who's been to one of our workshops back in 2014 and today, it's a different workshop, but it's also deeply healing. And for all those young men in that workshop who said they were interested, the educator, the adult said, nah, we don't think it's the right thing. Ultimately, what the educator did is they translated how they thought about our work compared to what the actual young men said about our work. The young men said, we want more of this. We need more of this. And the adults said, you probably should have done X, Y, Z better. You should have. And the things they were giving us feedback on were style and process, not the work that we do deeply, why they brought us in to do what we uniquely do best. And listen, it's not just this one school. I wish it was just this one school, but we see it over and over again. And listen, it's a dance for me to even talk about it, right? Because it could seem like I may be upset that they didn't bring us back and do work at their school. Like I could be upset like that they didn't choose us. That's probably true. But more so than them not bringing us in because they didn't want to work with us, it's all the young men who said, yes, we want more of this. And the school then did nothing. It's not that they went with someone else. They did nothing. Now, we've seen it happen over and over again. I could tell you story after story after story of educators and adults in school buildings who have made decisions for young people without talking to the young people. Now, listen, some of us as adults, we have to make decisions for young people because we have been around long enough and we have some of their best interests. But when we ask young people what they want and then we totally ignore what they want, I'm not talking about a candy bar before dinner. I'm talking about, I want a place to be able to talk about my feelings in a healthy way. I want more of that. And then for the adults to say, well, we don't actually have time or space or resources for you to talk about your feelings. So just stuff them again. And then maybe you should punch somebody on the baseball field. Then we'll get you to a counselor because then we'll realize that something must be wrong with you if you are a special athlete and yet you have now just punched somebody. How ironic. How ironic. And when we decide to get young people help, that's probably another conversation altogether. But what I'm excited about today, where we're going next, and I guess as we'll move into where we're going next, not only are we launching the Global Champions program, we invite you to join and sign up for that. Though the link will be in the show notes here. You can go to our website, everforwardclub.org, and get information there. You can find us on social media at everforwardclub. This next year is the 20th anniversary of the Ever Forward Club. Now, we start these conversations always talking about taking off the mask and the Million Mask movement, but the Ever Forward Club is the organization, the umbrella of this work. And so 20 years, 2004, as a first-year teacher at San Lorenzo High School, or if you want to go to our website, you'll see this anniversary. I mean, we may need to create like a collage of 20 years of this work. I have not even thought about that part yet, but this next year is our 20th anniversary. So we will be having and preparing for the 20th annual 24-hour relay challenge. It will be a 5K. It hasn't been 24 hours for a couple of years, but it has been a community event that starts at 10 a.m. on Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, and goes till 10 a.m. on Sunday. And people around the world have been taking on these challenges over this last couple of years. But in the early days, the 24-hour relay challenge was our community building event. students would walk and run for 24 hours on a team of 10. And this year, our hope is to be, once we get the site locked in, we'll tell you where we're hoping to get it locked in. We don't want to mess up our connections and make it not happen. But we are excited about this annual event and the 20th annual coming up. And that 20th annual 24-hour relay weekend, which is Memorial Day weekend 2024, will also be a community celebration of 20 years of doing this work. And so stay tuned for that. We will start reaching out for sponsors and the community people to be a part of that day. But we're super excited for all that is going to happen and all that will take place as a part of the Ever Forward Club, as a part of the Million Mask Movement, as a part of helping more people around the world realize that they are not alone. And so I could go on and on and on. And as you know, this is the work that I'm doing. And I probably will this next year have more episodes where I'm really kind of just talking to you, where I'm going to be talking about what we're working on, what we're growing, what we're learning, what we're seeing. We're going to release our first report over the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. Our first report is called The Tale of Two Schools. One private school, one public school, and looking at the data that we hear from the young men from those schools. And I think you're going to be surprised. If you're not shocked, you may be surprised. If you're not surprised, maybe you already know, and maybe you're already ready to be a part of the solution. But I think when we compare our public schools to our private schools, there are so many differences and there's so much that is exactly the same. So get ready. Get ready for this next year. And we invite you to get involved. Our team is growing. We're going to be hiring some new folks this year in the next couple of months. Lots of things happening within the work. If you have not yet told someone about this episode or this work that we're doing, please share it with somebody. If you haven't yet made a mask, we invite you to do that. Whatever the way you feel you can best get involved, do it. Like now. Don't wait. We invite you to follow us at Ever Forward Club on social media, and you can follow me at Branch Speaks. And we thank you. 3 years of this work has been these beautiful conversations. We couldn't do it without our engineer. So I want to give a special shout out to Ryan, Louis, Kelly Wong, who is our graphic designer and our graphics person. And we are working with a lot of folks in the back end to really help build these conversations. We have Dan, who is working on guest management. And we have a new team member who is working on graphic and video editing. So listen, this is exciting for us. If you don't know how hard we've been working over these last years, I want you to know that this conversation, this opportunity to just talk to you. And what we're going to be doing over this next year is we're going to be really helping educators in a bigger way. So if you are a teacher, or if you know a teacher, please share this with them. Share the last episode where we talked to Donald Friend, who was also a teacher. Look at the episode with Wenceslao, our youth host, who actually interviewed some of his own teachers. Just get ready for what's coming about how we can have more healthy conversations like this. We really appreciate you. We are thankful for you. And we hope that today, more than ever, that you realize there's more to you than anybody can ever see by just looking at you. Thanks for being a part of the Taking Off the Mask podcast. Thank you for being a part of the Million Mask Movement. We'll see you soon, folks. And as I close out this episode, I'm going to play a clip from my last podcast episode where I was a guest with Julie Calderon called Mujer Evolving. And I want you to take a look at that little clip that we put together. Actually, it was a powerful podcast episode. If you haven't listened to it, we'll put the link in the show notes as well. But I want to show you this one clip because I think it will show a journey of not only me and my journey, my own personal journey of growing up being a poor boy in Oakland, deciding to become a teacher that was not on my plan, but then moving forward to build this organization and build Ever Forward Club. It just came from a journey of me trying to get more out of my own life. And I hope that as you're figuring out where your life is today and where you're going, that you are making baby steps, even if they feel so small, towards the dreams of your own life. We're so thankful for her as being one of my colleagues, but also a fellow in education in this work. So take a listen here. We'll leave it here for you to listen to. And if nothing else, we'll see you soon. Take care, be well, and thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Happy anniversary. Bye now. I was on the kind of food stamps that was like Monopoly money. So, you know what I mean? I walk into the store with like a bunch of pieces of paper look like Monopoly money. It's not even the right size. And so everybody in line know you're poor. Like, I already know I'm poor, but now everyone in line knows I'm poor. So I would be like, my mom would send me to the store to be like, hey, go buy this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And then a half hour later, I come back out. She's like, what took you so long? I'm like, the line was long. She's like, there's not that many people in this parking lot. Because what would happen is if people would come in behind me in line, I would let them go in front of me. Because I didn't want anybody to see me pull this Monopoly money out of my pocket. So I was like embarrassed. I didn't really want the cashier to see it, but they had to see it. But the people behind me in line, I didn't want the stares of people watching this kid hand over Monopoly money to the cat. I felt it. And that feeling is something that I will never forget. It's a feeling that, like, I'm feeling right now. Like, I was like, why is my life like this? You know, like, and so I think that deep down, growing up as the oldest, my responsibility was to help take care of my siblings. I was always working at home. I was always exhausted. I was always doing something to do. It was like my mom had this allergy to anybody doing nothing. So she was always trying to make up stuff for me to do. Like it was kind of a training ground for learning to be a doer. Like your being is not enough just to get love and respect. I'm not doubting she loved me, but I think it always seemed connected to the doing. So I became really like trained that I always need to be doing something to get love, to get respect, to be appreciated, which as I look back, it's not really healthy, but it was the reality. So I think deep down, like I knew that being poor was not an option if I had a choice. And when I was a sophomore in high school is when when I found out my mom was a teacher, like I didn't really know I knew she was doing, I was always helping her grade papers and stuff like that, but I didn't really know. I tried to join that program Upward Bound, like that program Upward Bound that I eventually began teaching at. And I tried to join it. And so I turned in the application. It came to my school and I was like, I turned my application in the next day. Cause I'm like, I'm going to college. I am not going to be poor. I'm getting out of this city of Oakland. And I remember coming the next day, she called, I turned my application and she's like, oh man, you got this thing in turned in fast. I was like, I'm in this program because this is going to help me get out of Oakland. And I remember her calling me in like 2 days later, got called out of class. I went down for my little interview. I was ready. She was like, Ashanti, you have an amazing application here. Like, thank you for turning it in so soon. But unfortunately, you don't qualify for this program. I'm like, what? You're talking about? I want to go to college. She's like, well, yeah, but I understand that. But this program is for first generation college students. I'm like, yeah, I'm poor. Like, that's us. And they're like, well, the part right here your mom filled out, your mom said she's a teacher. Like, so what does that mean? And they're like, that means your mom went to college. And I remember like in my mind and even maybe out loud saying, you mean my mom went to college for us to be this broke? Like who would do that? Who would go to college and then your family, like I got holes in my shoes. Like, you know what I'm saying? When it rains, my shoes are like sponges. I'm walking down the hall squeaking, squeegee. Like, how is this possible? And I knew that day that I would never be a teacher, one. And I knew that I would never have a job where I couldn't live, where my kids would have to ever walk to school with holes in their shoes. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there is more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you.